All right, this is my pre-calculus. What's my sine and cosine lab 2? And this lab has a lot more where we're talking some real life stuff. But first, we're going to start with some possible formulas that we can get from raw data. Now, the one thing about having raw data that it's not perfect. And so when you actually go to graph these, you're going to see that you're going to swing an arc through something that might not look perfect, and that's okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set this up because they're going to, after we get done graphing, they're going to want us to find the formula. So we're going to set it all up for later. So we're going to do looks like, amplitude, frequency, period, and midline. So they want us to find a possible formula for this trigonometric function, and that's the data they gave us. So what we're going to do first is kind of set up the chart. And again, I don't have a ruler here, but I just want you to use most of the chart if you can. So I actually kind of went 2 from the bottom here and did my x-axis. So there's my x-axis. And then my y-axis, I went over a couple. And what I do when I start doing these, well, it's really wiggly, is I try to use as much as a graph as I can. I just don't want you to think that every time you do a graph that everything has to stand for 1, because it doesn't have to, okay? And how I came up with where to kind of set this up and how to count it by, so here's my x and here's my y, is I looked at the points that we had on the table. So I start out with 0, 2, and then I look and say, okay, they come all the way up. This is supposed to be a point, by the way. Close to 3 is the highest y I go. And the lowest I go was about 1.09. So it's almost like you're going up almost to 3 and pretty close to 1. So I actually used the graph quite big because we have a lot of points there. We go 3 decimal places. So I called this 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8. Here's 1, 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, and here's 2, 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, and here's my 3. And then I looked at my x's, I counted by 0.1, and I probably could have done a little bit farther apart, but I did each one 0.1. So I'm just going to do 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, and 1. I probably could have spaced that out a little bit more, but each one of them is 0.1. And then all I did was just graph all the points. So I don't have, I have the paper in front of me, but it's hard to go back and forth all the time. So our first point was 0, 2. So there's my first one. Then I was 0.1, 2.58. So here's 0.1, and it's 2.5888. So this is 2, 4. So they'll be right there. Then it goes 0.2, 2.9. So it's pretty close to 3. And then 0.3 is the same. Pretty close. 0.4 is 2.58. So this is 0.2, 0.4. So it's about there again. 0.5 is 2. So I'm back here to 2. And then 0.6 is 1.4. So that'd be 0.2, 1, 0.2, 0.4, be right in here somewhere. 1.049 is this one for 0.7. So 1.049 is going to be about here somewhere. 0.8 is the same. Whoops, 0.8 is the same. 0.9 is 1.4. 4. And then 1 is 2. So I hope as you look at this, you're like, oh, this kind of looks like a sine curve. So after you do your points, I'm just going to do this in, I guess I'll still do it in red, is to try to swing an arc through most of it. It's not going to be perfect, but the best that you can. Actually, my paper looks a lot nicer than this. There's my graph, okay? Now, when I look at it, it looks like sine, okay? So I'm going to come up here and say this looks like a sine curve to me, okay? Now we're going to come here to the midline. The midline is your high plus your low divided by 2. And basically on this one, it looks like 2 is the middle. So I'm going to say y equals 2 is the midline. Now I'll be more specific on the rest of this lab. The amplitude is high minus your midline. It's really close to 3. So I'm going to do 3 minus 2 is going to be 1. So this is a possible formula that kind of fits it. My period is 1, which equals 2 pi over my frequency. So cross multiply, so I get 2 pi over 1, so my frequency is 2 pi. So this is a very general y equals sine 2 pi x plus 2. Now, on the other ones that we do in this lab, I'm going to be a lot more specific about what the values will be, but this was a general one. So I hope that helps, and I hope I helped you kind of set it up so you know how to do the graph.